Airman First Class Riley Navarro had been fixing aircraft engines at Falcon Ridge Air Base for 4 years, dismissed by everyone as just another grease-stained maintenance worker who kept the real pilot's jets running. What nobody knew was that she was secretly one of the most skilled combat pilots who'd never been allowed in a cockpit until the morning when unidentified enemy fighters breached American airspace and every qualified pilot was either grounded or missing. What happened next would expose the greatest oversight in military aviation history and prove that sometimes the person everyone ignores is the only one who can save them all. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Riley arrived at Falcon Ridge Air Base every morning at 0430 hours, 90 minutes before her required shift began. The Montana air was crisp and thin at this elevation, carrying the scent of aviation fuel and the distant promise of snow from the Rocky Mountains. While the base slowly awakened around her, Riley had already begun her real work, not just the scheduled maintenance that kept the 42nd Fighter Wing operational, but the comprehensive aircraft assessments that would later be dismissed as overreach by her superiors. At 27, Riley possessed the kind of systematic understanding of combat aircraft that most pilots never achieved, even after years of flying. She could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, predict mechanical failures weeks before they occurred, and recite the performance specifications of every fighter jet in the U.S. arsenal from memory. Her small frame moved with practiced efficiency beneath the massive F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightning II aircraft, her hands reading the complex machinery like others might read a book. But what truly set Riley apart wasn't her mechanical expertise. It was her ability to think like the aircraft itself. When she crawled through the tight spaces of an engine compartment, she wasn't just checking components. She was understanding the machine's relationship to the sky, to speed, to the physics of flight. She knew how every adjustment would affect performance in combat scenarios that most maintenance personnel never considered. The other technicians respected her work, but saw her as obsessively thorough, spending hours on diagnostics that should take minutes. Senior Master Sergeant Jake Thompson, her direct supervisor, often joked that Riley knew the aircraft better than their own pilots. He had no idea how literally true that statement was, because what nobody at Falcon Ridge knew, what Riley had carefully hidden for 4 years, was that she spent every off-duty hour in flight simulation programs that most pilots couldn't access. Hidden in her cramped quarters were advanced tactical manuals, classified combat procedures, and detailed studies of air-to-air engagement strategies. She had memorized the flight characteristics of enemy aircraft from 6 different nations, studied dogfighting techniques that weren't taught in standard pilot training, and developed an intuitive understanding of aerial combat that came from combining mechanical knowledge with tactical theory. Riley had been flying since she was 12, taught by her grandfather, retired Air Force Colonel Daniel Navarro, who had flown missions over Vietnam and later became a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base. Under his guidance, she had accumulated over 2,000 hours of flight time in civilian aircraft before she ever enlisted. Her grandfather had taught her not just to fly, but to think three-dimensionally, to understand aircraft as extensions of human will rather than mere machines. When she joined the Air Force at 18, Riley had assumed her flight experience and mechanical aptitude would fast-track her into pilot training. Instead, she discovered that the military had specific pathways, specific requirements, and specific assumptions about who belonged in cockpits versus who belonged under aircraft. Her high school grades were solid, but not exceptional. Her college credits were from community institutions rather than prestigious universities. Most importantly, she lacked the officer track credentials that most pilot candidates possessed. The recruitment officer had been enthusiastic about her mechanical background. "The Air Force needs skilled technicians," he'd explained. "You'll be working on the most advanced aircraft in the world." It's crucial work. He hadn't mentioned that crucial work rarely led to flight opportunities, regardless of capability. So Riley had enlisted as an aircraft maintenance specialist, telling herself it would be temporary. She would prove her mechanical expertise, demonstrate her aviation knowledge, and eventually transition to pilot training through merit and persistence. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of watching less qualified personnel advance to flight, training while her applications were processed slowly, delayed, or rejected for bureaucratic reasons that seemed designed to discourage rather than evaluate. 4 years of listening to pilots complain about mechanical issues she could have prevented, or discuss tactical scenarios where her insights could have been valuable. 4 years of being invisible in plain sight, essential to operations but excluded from the glory. But Riley had used those 4 years strategically. While others saw her as stuck in maintenance, she saw herself as gaining unprecedented access to the aircraft she planned to eventually fly. Every hour spent in engine compartments taught her things about performance capabilities that pilot training rarely covered. Every diagnostic she ran gave her deeper understanding of how these machines responded under stress. Every conversation with pilots revealed gaps in their technical knowledge that she could exploit. The maintenance bay where Riley worked was located in Hangar 7, a massive structure that housed 12 F-22 Raptors and 8 F-35s. Hangar buzzed with constant activity as teams of technicians performed scheduled maintenance, emergency repairs, and pre-flight inspections. The sound was a symphony Riley had learned to interpret: the whine of hydraulic systems, the thunk of landing gear cycling, the whistle of air through intake systems being tested. Riley's workstation occupied a corner, space where she'd arranged her tools with military precision. Multiple computer monitors displayed aircraft systems data, maintenance schedules, and technical documentation. But tucked discreetly behind official manuals were her private studies, advanced aerodynamics texts, combat tactics analyses, and flight simulation software that she'd acquired through connections her supervisors didn't know she possessed. Her unofficial mentor was Chief Master Sergeant Angela Reeves, the senior enlisted advisor for the 42nd Fighter Wing. Reeves had noticed Riley's exceptional technical knowledge and work ethic, but she'd also observed something else, a quality of attention that suggested Riley was studying these aircraft for reasons beyond maintenance requirements. Navarro, Reeves had said one evening when they were alone in the hangar, "You look at these birds like you want to fly them, not just fix them." Riley had been careful in her response. "I believe in understanding the complete system, Chief. Better maintenance comes from understanding the mission." Reeves had studied her for a long moment. "That's a good answer. But it's not the whole truth, is it?" Since that conversation, Reeves had quietly provided Riley with access to additional resources, technical publications that weren't standard for maintenance personnel, invitations to pilot briefings where she could observe from the background, and opportunities to work directly with flight crews on complex problems. Riley suspected that Reeves understood her ambitions, even if military protocol prevented direct support. The irony of Riley's situation wasn't lost on her. She had become indispensable to the very operations that excluded her from their most critical roles. Pilots depended on her expertise to keep their aircraft mission ready, but that same expertise was deemed irrelevant when she applied for flight training. The system had created its own contradiction, recognizing her as essential while simultaneously limiting her potential. But Riley had learned patience from her grandfather, who'd often said that the military operated on institutional time rather than individual ambition. "Your moment will come," he'd told her during her last visit home. "When it does, you need to be ready in ways that others aren't. That's when exceptional preparation meets unexpected opportunity." As she finished her morning inspections and prepared for the day's scheduled maintenance, Riley had no way of knowing that her grandfather's prediction was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. The morning that had begun like countless others was about to become the day that would change not just her career, But her understanding of why 4 years of invisibility had been the perfect preparation for what was coming. In less than 6 hours, Falcon Ridge Air Base would face a crisis that would render traditional hierarchies irrelevant and conventional qualifications meaningless. Riley Navarro, the maintenance worker who'd been overlooked and underestimated, would finally have her moment to prove that sometimes the person everyone ignores is exactly the person everyone needs. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning that would change everything began with Colonel Harrison Drake striding into Hangar 7 at exactly 0800 hours, his polished boots echoing against the concrete floor like gunshots. Behind him followed his usual entourage, Major Jessica Hartwell, the squadron's operations officer who'd graduated top of her class from the Air Force Academy, and Captain Brad Mitchell, Drake's hand-picked flight leader who'd never seen actual combat but possessed the kind of confident swagger that impressed superior officers. Riley was deep inside the engine compartment of Raptor 07, running diagnostics on what she suspected was a developing fuel flow irregularity, when Drake's voice cut through the hangar's ambient noise. "Navarro," he called out, not bothering to approach her position. "We need those maintenance reports for this afternoon's training sortie. Think you can handle basic paperwork, or should I assign it to someone who understands operational priorities?" Riley carefully extracted herself from the engine bay, wiping hydraulic fluid from her hands with practiced efficiency. The reports Drake was referring to had been completed and uploaded at 0630 hours 2 hours before his arrival. She'd also included detailed analysis of potential performance issues and recommended adjustments for the high-altitude training exercises scheduled for that afternoon. The reports were completed at 0630. "Sir," Riley replied, her voice professionally neutral despite the familiar sting of his condescension. "They've been uploaded to the secure server with additional analysis of atmospheric conditions affecting engine performance at planned training altitudes." Major Hartwell stepped forward, her expression showing thinly veiled annoyance. "Always trying to exceed your scope, aren't you, Navarro? You're a mechanic, not a meteorologist. Stick to turning wrenches and leave flight planning to people with actual aviation education." Riley maintained her composure, though she could recite atmospheric flight dynamics better than most pilots on the base. "Ma'am, I noticed potential turbulence patterns that could affect engine performance during planned maneuvers. The data suggests," Colonel Drake interrupted sharply, "that you need to remember your place in this operation. You maintain aircraft, period. You don't analyze weather patterns, you don't make tactical assessments, and you certainly don't second-guess flight operations planned by qualified officers." The hangar fell, quiet except for the steady hum of diagnostic equipment and the distant sound of aircraft engines warming up on the flight line. Other maintenance personnel had stopped their work to listen, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the space. Captain Mitchell, who'd been silent until now, decided to add his perspective. "Colonel, maybe we should review Navarro's access to operational information. It seems inappropriate for maintenance personnel to have detailed knowledge of training exercises and flight plans." Riley felt her stomach tighten. Access to operational information was crucial for proper maintenance scheduling and pre-flight preparation. Without it, she couldn't anticipate the specific stresses and requirements that different missions would place on aircraft systems. "Actually, sir," Chief Master Sergeant Reeves interjected, stepping forward from where she'd been observing the interaction. "Sergeant Navarro's comprehensive approach to maintenance has prevented 3 potential in-flight emergencies in the past 6 months. Her analysis goes beyond basic repair work because she understands how aircraft systems interact with operational demands." Drake's jaw tightened visibly. He didn't appreciate being contradicted, especially not in front of junior personnel. "Chief, I understand you want to support your people, But there's a clear hierarchy here for good reason. Maintenance personnel maintain. Pilots fly. Operations officers plan missions. When people start overstepping their designated roles, it creates confusion and undermines the chain of command. Reeves stood her ground. Sir, with respect, Sergeant Navarro's overstepping has kept our aircraft operational when standard maintenance protocols would have failed. Her understanding of system integration has, enough. Drake's voice carried the authority of absolute command. I don't want to hear another word about Navarro's special insights or exceptional understanding. She's a maintenance technician with delusions of grandeur. That ends now. He turned his attention back to Riley, his expression cold and dismissive. Navarro, your job is to follow maintenance checklists and repair what's broken. Nothing more. If I hear about you analyzing flight plans, commenting on tactical decisions, or involving yourself in operational matters again, you'll find yourself reassigned to something more appropriate for your skill level. Maybe ground vehicle maintenance at a supply depot in North Dakota. Riley closed the diagnostic tablet she'd been holding, her fingers steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Understood, sir. Good. And Navarro? That fuel flow irregularity you think you detected in Raptor 07. Captain Mitchell is scheduled to fly that aircraft this afternoon. Since you seem to think there's a problem, you have until 1400 hours to find it and fix it. If there's nothing actually wrong, I'll consider it proof that you're creating problems to justify your excessive involvement in operations. As Drake and his officers left the hangar, Riley remained standing beside Raptor 07, staring at the aircraft that had become the center of an impossible challenge. The fuel flow irregularity was subtle, a pattern she detected through hours of careful monitoring and analysis. It wouldn't show up on standard diagnostic tests, and it might not manifest as an obvious problem during routine flight operations. But if Mitchell pushed the aircraft hard during high-altitude maneuvers, if he demanded maximum performance from the engines under stress conditions, that irregularity could cascade into complete fuel system failure. The kind of failure that killed pilots and destroyed multi-million-dollar aircraft. Senior Master Sergeant Thompson approached her workstation, his expression sympathetic but concerned. Riley, maybe you should just run standard diagnostics and sign off on the aircraft. Colonel Drake is looking for reasons to get rid of you, and this feels like a setup. Riley looked up from her tablet where she was reviewing fuel system schematics. Jake, there's a real problem with this aircraft. I can feel it in the engine response patterns. The fuel atomization isn't consistent across all injection points. But can you prove it? Can you show Drake concrete evidence that will satisfy his requirements? That was the trap Riley found herself in. Her detection of the problem came from an intuitive understanding of aircraft systems that went far beyond her official training. She could sense the irregularity through subtle changes in engine behavior, but proving it required diagnostic techniques that weren't part of standard maintenance protocols. Technical Sergeant Linda Washington, one of the few other female technicians in the hangar, joined their conversation. Riley, Thompson's right. Drake wants you gone. If you can't find a measurable problem, he'll use this as justification to transfer you out. But if you do find something and it turns out to be minor, he'll say you're creating unnecessary drama. Riley understood the political dynamics at play, but she also understood aircraft systems. Linda, if Mitchell takes this bird up and pushes it hard, there's a real chance of catastrophic fuel system failure. I can't sign off on an aircraft that might kill its pilot just to protect my career. Then find the problem. Washington said simply. Not for Drake, not for Mitchell, but because you know there's something wrong and you're the only one who can fix it. Riley spent the next 6 hours conducting the most thorough fuel system analysis of her career. She traced every line, tested every connection, analyzed every component. Standard diagnostics showed green across all parameters. Advanced testing revealed no obvious anomalies. But the subtle irregularity persisted, a pattern that suggested intermittent fuel flow disruption under high demand conditions. At 1300 hours, 1 hour before Drake's deadline, Riley finally found it. A microscopic crack in a fuel line connector, invisible to visual inspection and too small to affect low-pressure operations. But under the high-pressure demands of combat speed maneuvering, that crack would open, disrupting fuel flow and potentially causing complete engine shutdown. She documented the problem with photographs, pressure test data, and detailed technical analysis. The evidence was conclusive. Raptor 07 had a fuel system defect that would have been catastrophic under operational stress. When Colonel Drake returned to review her findings, Riley presented the documentation with professional precision. He examined the evidence, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable as he realized she'd identified a genuine safety hazard. "This crack is barely visible," he said finally. "How did you even find it?" "Systematic analysis of pressure response patterns, sir. The irregularity I detected earlier led me to focus on high-pressure connection points." Major Hartwell, who'd been reviewing Riley's documentation, looked up with grudging respect. This would have killed Captain Mitchell if he'd pushed the aircraft to maximum performance. For a moment, Riley thought she might have finally proven her exceptional capabilities to the people who mattered. Then Drake's expression hardened again. "Navarro, you got lucky. This time you found something real, but that doesn't change the fundamental issue. You're still overstepping your authority, still involving yourself in matters beyond your pay grade. Consider this a warning. One aircraft problem doesn't make you indispensable." As Drake and his officers left again, Riley realized that no amount of competence would change their perception of her role in the operation. She just saved a pilot's life and prevented the loss of a $150 million aircraft, and it was dismissed as getting lucky. But Chief Master Sergeant Reeves lingered behind after the others left. "Navarro, that was exceptional work. That kind of analysis and problem-solving ability is exactly what we need in our flight operations." Riley looked up from her workstation. "Chief, what do you mean?" Reeves studied her carefully. "I mean, there are opportunities in this Air Force for people with your capabilities. Opportunities that might not be obvious through traditional channels." That evening, alone in her quarters, Riley received an encrypted message on her personal tablet. The sender was identified only as Phoenix Recruitment, and the message was brief. "Your technical analysis and problem-solving abilities have been noted. Are you interested in opportunities that fully utilize your capabilities?" Riley stared at the message for a long time. She had no idea who had sent it or what opportunities they were referring to. But after years of being dismissed and underestimated, someone had finally noticed her true potential. She typed a single word in response: "Yes." What Riley didn't know was that her exceptional work had been monitored by people far above Colonel Drake's authority level. People who understood that the most dangerous oversight in military operations wasn't mechanical failure, it was wasted human potential. In less than 12 hours, that oversight would become a matter of national security. The encrypted message from Phoenix Recruitment arrived at 2,147 hours, 3 days after Riley had saved Captain Mitchell's life with her fuel system analysis. She was alone in her quarters, reviewing advanced aerodynamics equations on her personal tablet, when the secure notification appeared. The sender's credentials checked out through military channels she wasn't supposed to know how to access, but her grandfather's connections ran deeper than most people realized. "Airman Navarro," the message began. "Your exceptional technical analysis and problem-solving capabilities have been observed at multiple levels of command. We represent a specialized recruitment initiative seeking individuals with unique skill sets that transcend traditional military categorizations. Your background suggests qualifications that extend far beyond your current assignment." Riley read the message 3 times, her pulse quickening with each pass. Someone in the military hierarchy understood that her capabilities exceeded her position. But more intriguingly, They seemed to know things about her background that weren't in her official personnel file. "We are aware of your civilian flight experience, your advanced tactical studies, and your comprehensive understanding of combat aircraft systems. We also know that standard military pathways have not recognized these qualifications appropriately. If you are interested in opportunities that fully utilize your diverse expertise, respond with your availability for a confidential assessment." The message was signed with credentials that made Riley's breath catch. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Phoenix, Special Operations Recruitment Division, Direct Reporting Unit. Riley had heard whispers about special operations recruitment programs that operated outside normal channels. Elite units that prioritize capability over credentials, performance over politics. She'd assumed they were myths, stories told to maintain morale among personnel who felt trapped by military bureaucracy. She composed her response carefully. "I am available for assessment at your convenience. My current assignment allows flexibility during off-duty hours." The reply came within minutes. "Assessment. Scheduled for 0530 hours, Hangar 12 Thursday. Come prepared to demonstrate practical capabilities." No one at Falcon Ridge is to know about this meeting. Hangar 12 was located on the far edge of the base, used primarily for classified aircraft testing and special operations training. Riley had walked past it countless times during her 4 years at Falcon Ridge, but had never been inside. Few personnel had access to that section of the base. Over the next 2 days, Riley found herself caught between anticipation and anxiety. During regular duty hours, she maintained her usual routine, performing scheduled maintenance and avoiding unnecessary interaction with Colonel Drake or his staff. But during off-duty time, she prepared for whatever assessment awaited her. She reviewed every aspect of her flight training, both official and unofficial. Her grandfather's lessons in tactical flying, learned during summer visits to his ranch in Wyoming, where he kept a restored P-51 Mustang. The countless hours she'd spent in advanced flight simulators, programs she'd accessed through connections in the civilian aviation community. The detailed studies of modern combat aircraft that she'd conducted parallel to her maintenance training. Most importantly, she reviewed the classified technical manuals she'd obtained through careful cultivation of relationships across different military installations. Documents that revealed the true capabilities of American combat aircraft, beyond what was available in standard maintenance publications. Knowledge that would be crucial if this assessment was what she hoped it might be. Thursday morning arrived with unusual clarity. The Montana sky was crystal clear, visibility unlimited, with wind conditions that would be perfect for flight operations. Riley arrived at Hangar 12 at exactly 0530 hours, her heart pounding with nervous energy. The hangar door was slightly open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. Riley approached cautiously, uncertain of protocol for this kind of meeting. As she stepped through the entrance, motion-activated lights illuminated the interior, revealing something that made her stop breathing. In the center of the hangar sat an F-16 Fighting Falcon, its sleek form gleaming under the fluorescent lights. But this wasn't the standard F-16. The aircraft bore no identifying markings, and subtle modifications to its airframe suggested capabilities beyond normal specifications. This was a test aircraft, possibly experimental, configured for purposes that weren't documented in any manual Riley had ever seen. Impressive, isn't it? A voice said from the shadows near the aircraft. Riley turned to see a woman in flight suit approaching, her bearing suggesting both authority and combat experience. The name tape read Phoenix, confirming the identity from the encrypted messages. "Lieutenant Colonel," Riley said, snapping to attention. "At ease, Airman. We're not here for military protocol." Phoenix studied Riley with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "We're here to determine whether 4 years of maintenance work has prepared you for something significantly different." Phoenix gestured toward the F-16. "What do you see when you look at this aircraft?" Riley approached the fighter, her trained eye automatically assessing its configuration. Modified F-16C Block 50, but with significant alterations. Extended range fuel tanks, upgraded avionics suite, and what appears to be enhanced engine performance modifications. The radar signature reduction measures suggest stealth technology integration. Good. What else? Riley walked around the aircraft, noting details that most people would miss. The weapon systems have been reconfigured for air-to-air superiority rather than multi-role operations. Enhanced targeting systems, improved electronic warfare capabilities. This isn't a standard Air Force F-16. This is a specialized interceptor. Phoenix nodded approvingly. This aircraft represents a classified program developing next-generation air defense capabilities. We need pilots who understand not just how to fly these systems, but how they function at a technical level. Pilots who can troubleshoot problems in flight, adapt to unexpected performance variations, and push the aircraft beyond normal operational parameters. Riley felt her pulse quicken. "Ma'am, are you offering me pilot training?" "I'm offering you something better than pilot training. I'm offering you the chance to become an operational test pilot for systems that don't officially exist. But first, you need to prove that your mechanical expertise translates into flight capability." Phoenix handed Riley a flight suit and helmet. Standard checkout procedures would take weeks. "We don't have weeks. I need to know right now whether you can handle an aircraft that's more complex and more capable than anything you've worked on before." Riley took the equipment, her hands trembling slightly with excitement and terror. "Ma'am, I don't have current flight status. I don't have official pilot training. If something goes wrong, Navarro, we've been watching you for months. We know about your grandfather's training, your civilian flight hours, your simulator work, and your comprehensive understanding of combat aircraft. We also know that you've been wasted in maintenance, while less qualified personnel advance to flight positions." Phoenix's voice carried conviction. That made Riley believe this opportunity was real. "This aircraft has been modified with dual controls. I'll be in the back seat, monitoring your performance and ready to take control if necessary. But based on everything we've observed about your capabilities, that won't be necessary." Riley suited up with practiced efficiency, her muscle memory from civilian flying returning as she performed pre-flight checks she hadn't done in years. But these weren't civilian procedures. These were military combat aircraft preparations that she'd only studied theoretically. "Walk me through your pre-flight assessment," Phoenix instructed as they approached the aircraft. Riley began with external inspection, identifying every system, every component, every potential point of failure. Her maintenance background gave her insights that most pilots lacked. She understood not just what each system did, but how it worked, how it could fail, and how to compensate for problems. Engine intake inspection shows optimal airflow geometry. Landing gear shows proper hydraulic pressure and structural integrity. Weapon systems appear armed, but safe. Avionics bay shows all systems green. But I'm noticing some unusual power consumption patterns that suggest this aircraft has electronic systems not present in standard F-16 configurations. Phoenix smiled for the first time. "Those unusual systems are exactly why we need someone with your analytical capabilities. Most pilots would accept green lights as sufficient. You're questioning why the power consumption doesn't match expected parameters." As they climbed into the aircraft, Riley felt a sense of completion that she'd never experienced in 4 years of maintenance work. This was where she belonged, not under aircraft fixing them, but inside them, becoming part of the machine she understood so completely. The cockpit was familiar yet alien. Standard F-16 layout, but with modifications that reflected the aircraft's special capabilities. Riley's hands found the controls instinctively, her training and intuition combining to create immediate comfort with the complex systems. "Navarro," Phoenix said through the intercom, "what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this hangar." This assessment isn't just about your flying ability. Intelligence sources suggest potential threats to American airspace that could require immediate response from pilots with exceptional capabilities. Standard military training procedures take too long. We need operators who can be ready immediately. Riley felt ice form in her stomach. Ma'am, what kind of threats? The kind that would require every available pilot to be ready for combat operations, regardless of their current assignment or official qualifications. The kind that would make the difference between someone like Colonel Drake dismissing your capabilities and the nation needing every skilled pilot it can find. Phoenix's words carried implications that Riley didn't want to consider. But as she initiated engine startup procedures and felt the F-16's power responding to her commands, she realized that 4 years of being underestimated might have been perfect preparation for something far more significant than proving herself to her immediate superiors. Engine startup complete. All systems showing green. Ready for taxi clearance, Riley reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. Cleared for taxi to runway 07. And Navarro? Welcome to the program that's going to change everything about how this Air Force identifies and utilizes combat talent. As the F-16 rolled toward the runway, Riley understood that this wasn't just a flight assessment. This was preparation for something that would test every skill she'd developed, every capability she'd hidden, every hour of training she'd completed in secret. In less than 48 hours. Those preparations would become the difference between American air superiority and catastrophic defeat. Riley's flight assessment with Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix lasted 2 hours and covered every aspect of combat aviation that standard pilot training addressed over months. When they finally landed, Phoenix's evaluation was unequivocal. Riley possessed natural flight instincts and technical understanding that surpassed most operational pilots. Her combination of mechanical expertise and intuitive flying ability made her an ideal candidate for the classified program. Report back here tomorrow at 0500 for advanced systems training, Phoenix instructed as they completed post-flight procedures. And remember, no one at Falcon Ridge can know about this program until we're ready to make it official. Riley returned to her regular duties that afternoon with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since enlisting. For the first time in 4 years, someone had recognized her true capabilities and offered her the opportunity to use them. She threw herself into her maintenance work with renewed energy, seeing each task as preparation for the larger role she would soon assume. That energy lasted exactly 18 hours. The next morning, Riley arrived at her workstation to find Senior Master Sergeant Thompson waiting with an expression she'd never seen before, a mixture of anger, confusion, and what looked like genuine concern. Navarro, we need to talk. Now. He gestured toward the small office adjacent to the main hangar floor. And bring your security access card and any official documentation you have in your possession. Riley followed Thompson into the office, her stomach beginning to tighten with apprehension. Through the window, she could see other maintenance personnel watching the conversation with curiosity and concern. Riley, I've been with this wing for 12 years, Thompson began, his voice carrying a weight she'd never heard before. In that time, I've seen good people destroyed by politics, incompetence, and bureaucracy. I don't want to see that happen to you. He opened a folder on the desk between them. Yesterday, Colonel Drake received a call from Wing Headquarters questioning your security clearance status. Apparently, someone has been asking questions about your background, your family connections, and your activities outside normal duty hours. Riley felt ice forming in her veins. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests someone thinks you might be involved in activities that exceed your authorization level. Questions about your grandfather's military connections, your civilian flight experience, and your access to technical information that might not be appropriate for your current position. Thompson leaned forward, his expression intensely serious. Riley, I need you to tell me the truth. Have you been involved in any unofficial activities? Any meetings or programs that aren't part of your normal assignment? The question hung in the air like a trap. Riley realized that her involvement with Phoenix recruitment was creating exactly the kind of scrutiny that could destroy her career. But she also couldn't reveal the classified program without violating direct orders from a superior officer. Jake, I've never done anything that violates military regulations or compromises base security, she said carefully. Everything I do is focused on being the best maintainer and airman I can be. Thompson studied her response, clearly sensing that she wasn't telling him everything. Riley, that might be true, but perception matters more than reality in situations like this. And right now, the perception is that you're involved in something that makes certain people very nervous. Before Riley could respond, the office door opened without ceremony. Colonel Drake entered, followed by Major Hartwell and 2 officers. Riley didn't recognize, both wearing the distinctive badges of the Office of Special Investigations. Sergeant Thompson, thank you for bringing this to my attention, Drake said, his voice carrying the cold authority of someone about to demonstrate institutional power. Navarro, these officers have some questions about your recent activities. The first OC officer, whose name tag read Carson, opened a tablet and began reading from what appeared to be a formal investigation summary. Airman Navarro, our investigation has revealed several concerning patterns in your recent behavior that suggest possible security violations. Riley felt her world beginning to collapse, but she maintained her composure. Sir, what specific concerns? First, you've been accessing technical databases and classified maintenance procedures that exceed your need-to-know requirements. Second, you've been observed in areas of the base that are not part of your normal duty assignment. Third, you've been making inquiries about aircraft capabilities and operational procedures that are outside your scope of responsibility. Accusation was technically accurate, but stripped of all context. Riley's database access was part of thorough maintenance analysis. Her presence in restricted areas was for legitimate repair work. Her inquiries about aircraft capabilities were essential for proper technical support. Sir, I can provide documentation for every database access, every area I've visited, and every inquiry I've made. All of it relates to my maintenance responsibilities. The second OC officer, Williams, stepped forward with a different approach. Airman, we're not questioning your maintenance work. We're questioning your motivation for exceeding standard procedures and your apparent interest in operational matters that don't concern maintenance. Personnel. Major Hartwell added her perspective with obvious satisfaction. What we're seeing is a pattern of an enlisted person who thinks she knows better than her superiors, who consistently oversteps her authority, and who appears to believe she's qualified for roles she's never been trained for. Colonel Drake moved closer, his presence intimidating in the small office space. Navarro, I've been watching your performance for months. You consistently exceed your assigned duties, not because you're dedicated, but because you think you belong somewhere other than maintenance. That kind of arrogance is dangerous in a military environment. Riley realized this wasn't an investigation. It was a coordinated effort to eliminate her before she could challenge the established order. But she also knew that defending herself would only provide more ammunition for her accusers. Sir, I've always followed proper procedures and maintained appropriate security protocols, she said quietly. Have you? Carson consulted his tablet again. Yesterday, you were absent from your assigned duty station for over 2 hours with no documentation of your location or activities. Standard protocol requires accountability for all personnel during duty hours. Riley's blood ran cold. Her flight assessment with Phoenix had been conducted during what should have been off-duty time, but the timing had overlapped with her regular shift. She couldn't explain her absence without revealing the classified program. I was conducting authorized maintenance activities, she said, knowing the response was inadequate. Where? On what aircraft? With whose authorization? Williams pressed. The questions created an impossible trap. Any specific answer would either reveal classified information or provide evidence of unauthorized activity. Riley remained silent, knowing that both responses and non-responses would be used against her. Drake stepped forward, his expression showing satisfaction at finally cornering his target. Navarro, your inability to account for your time and activities yesterday demonstrates exactly the kind of unreliability that makes you unsuitable for your current position, let alone any position requiring greater responsibility. Thompson, who had remained silent during the interrogation, finally spoke up. Colonel, Sergeant Navarro has never had any documented security violations or performance issues. This investigation seems to be based on assumptions rather than evidence of actual wrongdoing. Sergeant Thompson. Drake's voice carried a warning. I suggest you focus on supervising personnel who respect proper military hierarchy rather than defending those who consistently violate it. The message was clear. Supporting Riley would jeopardize Thompson's own career. Carson closed his tablet with bureaucratic finality. Airman Navarro, pending completion of our investigation, your security clearance is suspended and your access to aircraft systems is restricted. You will be reassigned to general administrative duties until we determine whether formal disciplinary action is warranted. Riley felt the careful construction of 4 years crumbling around her. Without security clearance, she couldn't perform maintenance duties. Without access to aircraft systems, she couldn't demonstrate her expertise. Without her technical role, she was just another administrative clerk with no path toward advancement. Additionally, Major Hartwell added, any attempt to contact personnel outside normal chain of command regarding this investigation will be considered obstruction of justice. You will report to the administrative section at 0800 tomorrow and remain in that assignment until further notice. As the OC officers and Colonel Drake left the office, Riley remained sitting in the chair, staring at her hands. 4 years of exemplary service, 4 years of proving her dedication and expertise, had been erased in 15 minutes by an institutional system that saw her capabilities as threats rather than assets. Thompson closed the door and sat down across from her. Riley, I don't know what you've gotten involved in, but this is serious. Drake isn't just trying to put you in your place, he's trying to end your military career entirely. Riley looked up at him, seeing genuine concern in his eyes. Jake, what if I told you that everything I've done has been in service of becoming a better airman and potentially contributing more to our mission? I'd say that might be true, but it doesn't matter if you can't prove it through official channels. And right now, you can't prove anything without violating the very security protocols you're accused of breaking. That evening, alone in her quarters, Riley stared at her personal tablet, wondering whether to contact Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix about the investigation. The OC warning made it clear that any unauthorized communication could result in formal charges, but the classified program was her only hope of vindication. Before she could decide, the tablet chimed with an encrypted message. Assessment confirmed. Your technical and flight capabilities exceed all expectations. Be ready for immediate activation when authorization is received. Current restrictions are temporary obstacle, not permanent barrier. Maintain operational security. Phoenix. Riley realized that her institutional persecution wasn't random harassment, it was the predictable response of a system that couldn't recognize exceptional capability when it challenged established hierarchies. But somewhere above Colonel Drake's authority level, people understood that the military's greatest weakness wasn't equipment failure or tactical deficiency. It was the systematic waste of human potential in the name of maintaining comfortable hierarchies. In less than 24 hours, that weakness would become a national security crisis that no amount of bureaucratic procedure could solve. The emergency alarm that would change everything began at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after Riley had been relegated to filing paperwork in the base administrative office. She was in her quarters, unable to sleep, reviewing technical manuals on her personal tablet when the base-wide alert system activated with a priority level she'd never heard before. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unknown aircraft have penetrated restricted airspace. Base defense condition. Charlie is now in effect. Riley was dressed and moving toward the administrative building within minutes. But the chaos she encountered told her this wasn't a standard training exercise. Emergency vehicles raced across the base. Communications towers buzzed with activity. And the flight line showed signs of rapid aircraft preparation that suggested genuine crisis. In the administrative office, she found Senior Airman Davis and Staff Sergeant Monroe huddled around a radio, listening to fragmented reports from air traffic control and regional defense networks. The picture emerging was unlike anything in recent memory. Multiple unidentified aircraft had appeared on radar screens across 3 states, moving in coordinated formations toward strategic military installations. "Where's Colonel Drake?" Riley asked, her training overriding her current administrative status. "Emergency command post." Davis replied without looking up from the radio. "All senior officers have been called to crisis management stations. Word is that these aren't civilian aircraft or known military configurations." Riley felt her pulse quicken. The implications were staggering. Unknown aircraft penetrating American airspace in coordinated formation suggested either massive intelligence, failure, or the kind of direct military threat that hadn't materialized since World War. Her administrative duties suddenly seemed irrelevant. She made her way toward Hangar 7, where her maintenance background might be useful for rapid aircraft preparation. But as she approached the flight line, the scope of the crisis became apparent. Falcon Ridge Air Base had 12 operational F-22 Raptors and 8 F-35 Lightning II aircraft under normal conditions. But mechanical issues, routine maintenance, and training rotations meant only 8 aircraft were immediately flight-ready. Worse, the base had only 6 pilots currently qualified and available for combat operations. The mathematics were terrifying. If the unknown aircraft represented hostile forces with significant numbers, Falcon Ridge's defensive capabilities were grossly insufficient. Riley found Chief Master Sergeant Reeves in Hangar 7, coordinating with frantic maintenance crews to prepare every available aircraft for immediate flight operations. The scene was controlled chaos. Technicians running pre-flight checks, weapons specialists loading missiles, and fuel crews topping off tanks. "Chief," Riley called out, approaching Reeves despite her restricted status. "What's our operational status?" Reeves looked up from a clipboard, covered with aircraft readiness reports. "Navarro, you're supposed to be an administrative assignment." "Chief, if we're facing actual threats, administrative assignments don't matter." "How can I help?" For a moment, Reeves studied Riley's face, seeing the same dedication and expertise that had made her exceptional at maintenance work. "We have 8 aircraft that can fly, but we're having problems with 2 of them. Engine diagnostics are showing irregularities that our standard maintenance protocols can't identify." Riley moved immediately toward the affected aircraft, her trained eye assessing the diagnostic displays and engine performance data. Within minutes, she'd identified issues that the regular maintenance teams had missed. Subtle fuel mixture problems that would affect high-altitude performance and electronic system conflicts that could compromise targeting systems. "Chief, these problems are fixable, but they require adjustments that aren't in standard procedures," Riley reported. "I can have both aircraft fully operational in 30 minutes. "Do it," Reeves ordered without hesitation. "Right now, we need every aircraft we can get airborne." As Riley dove into the complex repairs, she became aware of heated discussions near the hangar entrance. Colonel Drake had arrived with Major Hartwell and several other officers, their voices carrying across the maintenance bay. "We have 6 qualified pilots and potentially 10 aircraft," Drake was saying. "But intelligence reports suggest we're facing at least 20 unknown aircraft with capabilities we can't assess." Our defensive posture is completely inadequate. Sir, Major Hartwell replied, reinforcements from neighboring bases are at least 90 minutes away. We need to consider evacuation procedures and ground-based defense options. Riley's hands never stopped working on the aircraft systems, but her mind processed the tactical implications of what she was hearing. 6 pilots against 20 unknowns was a hopeless ratio, especially if the unknown aircraft possessed advanced capabilities. Then she heard a voice that changed everything. Colonel Drake, this is Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix, reporting as ordered for emergency operations. Riley looked up from the engine compartment to see Phoenix approaching Drake's group, her bearing conveying an authority that made the base commander straighten unconsciously. Colonel Phoenix, Drake replied with obvious confusion. I wasn't aware that Special Operations had personnel stationed at Falcon Ridge. We don't, under normal circumstances. But these aren't normal circumstances. Phoenix handed Drake a tablet with what appeared to be emergency authorization documents. I'm here under direct orders from Air Force Special Operations. Command to assess and utilize all available resources for base defense. Drake scanned the documents, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable as he realized he was dealing with authority that superseded his command structure. Colonel, our situation is critical. We have insufficient aircraft and pilots to mount effective defense against the reported threats. I've requested emergency reinforcements, but, Colonel Drake, Phoenix interrupted, I need you to understand something. The aircraft approaching our airspace aren't conventional threats. Intelligence suggests advanced technology and tactical capabilities that exceed standard engagement protocols. This situation requires every qualified pilot we can find, regardless of their current assignment or official status. Riley felt her heart stop as Phoenix's gaze moved across the hangar and settled on her, positioned beside the aircraft she was repairing, including pilots whose qualifications haven't been officially recognized through traditional channels. Drake followed Phoenix's gaze, his face showing incomprehension and then dawning horror as he realized what was being suggested. Colonel Phoenix, you cannot be serious. Navarro is a maintenance technician under investigation for security violations. She has no pilot training, no combat qualifications. No, Colonel Drake. Phoenix's voice carried the kind of authority that ended discussions. Airman Navarro has more flight hours in combat aircraft than half your qualified pilot roster. Her technical knowledge of these systems exceeds that of most operational pilots, and her tactical understanding has been validated through assessment protocols you don't have clearance to know about. The hangar fell silent except for the sound of maintenance equipment and the distant wail of emergency sirens. Every person in the building was listening to a conversation that was redefining everything they thought they knew about military hierarchy and qualifications. That's impossible, Major Hartwell interjected. Navarro is an enlisted maintenance worker with no flight status. You can't just declare someone a combat pilot because of an emergency. Phoenix turned to face Hartwell with an expression that suggested she was dealing with dangerous ignorance. Major, 3 days ago, Airman Navarro completed advanced combat flight assessment in a modified F-16, demonstrating capabilities that qualify her for immediate operational status. Her performance exceeded standards that many of your official pilots have never achieved. Riley stood up from her work position, tools still in her hands, feeling every eye in the hangar focused on her. The moment she'd been preparing for during 4 years of secret training had arrived in the most dramatic way possible. Colonel Drake, Phoenix continued, you have 2 choices. You can maintain bureaucratic protocol and defend this base with insufficient resources against superior numbers, likely resulting in catastrophic failure. Or you can utilize every qualified asset available, including one who has been systematically underestimated by your command structure. Drake's face showed the internal conflict between institutional rigidity and tactical necessity. Even if what you're saying is true, We don't have time for proper authorization procedures. Flight status verification, or Colonel, Phoenix interrupted, producing another tablet. These are emergency combat authorization orders signed by the Air Force Chief of Staff. They grant immediate operational status to any personnel deemed qualified by Special Operations Assessment, regardless of their current assignment or administrative status. She handed the tablet to Drake, who scanned it with growing disbelief. Furthermore, Phoenix added, Airman Navarro's security investigation has been closed by orders from Air Force Intelligence. Her activities were part of a classified recruitment program that you were not authorized to know about. The restrictions placed on her access and duties are hereby rescinded. Riley watched Drake's face as he processed information that completely overturned his understanding of the situation. The maintenance technician he'd been trying to eliminate was actually a classified asset whose capabilities had been validated at levels far above his authority. Chief Master Sergeant Reeves approached Riley's position, her expression showing a mixture of vindication and amazement. Navarro, are you telling me you've been a qualified combat pilot this entire time? Riley set down her tools and faced the assembled group. Chief, I've been training and preparing for combat operations for 4 years. Not because I wanted to prove anything to anyone, but because I knew that maintenance expertise combined with flight capability could make me more valuable to our mission. She gestured toward the aircraft she'd just repaired. These birds are ready for combat operations. Their systems are optimized beyond standard parameters because I understand both how they work and how they need to perform under combat stress. Phoenix stepped forward. Navarro, we now have 9 aircraft ready for operations. Are you prepared to take tactical command of a defensive flight against superior numbers, using aircraft and tactics that most pilots have never encountered? Riley looked around the hangar at faces showing shock, disbelief, and dawning recognition. For 4 years, she'd been invisible, dismissed, and underestimated. But every hour of that experience had prepared her for this moment, when her unique combination of skills would determine whether the base could mount an effective defense. Yes, ma'am. I'm ready. Colonel Drake stared at her for a long moment, his worldview fundamentally altered by the revelation that his most dismissed subordinate was actually his most qualified pilot. Then get suited up, Phoenix ordered. Unknown aircraft will be in engagement range in 45 minutes, and you're now our tactical flight leader. As alarms continued to sound across the base, Riley realized that 4 years of being underestimated hadn't been wasted time. It had been perfect preparation for the moment when conventional thinking would fail and only unconventional solutions could succeed. Riley's transformation from maintenance worker to combat pilot happened with military efficiency that left no time for doubt or hesitation. Within 20 minutes of Phoenix's revelation, she was suited in full flight gear, conducting pre-flight checks on Raptor 03, the same aircraft she had been maintaining just hours earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her. She knew this machine's quirks, its performance characteristics, and its maintenance history better than any pilot who had ever flown it. The flight line buzzed with controlled chaos as 9 F-22 Raptors and F-35s prepared for immediate launch. Ground crews worked with desperate efficiency, loading weapons, topping fuel tanks, and running final system checks. But the atmosphere carried an undercurrent of uncertainty that Riley could feel from every person who watched her climb into the cockpit of a fighter jet for the first time in an official capacity. Falcon lead. This is tower control, came the voice through her headset as she completed startup procedures. You are cleared for immediate departure. Threat assessment shows multiple bogies approaching from northwest. Estimated 24 aircraft in 3 formations. Riley's pulse quickened, but her training took over. 24 unknown aircraft against 9 defenders wasn't just challenging, it was the kind of odds that required tactical brilliance rather than conventional engagement strategies. Tower Falcon lead copies. Flight of 9 launching for intercept. She switched to the tactical frequency. Falcon flight, this is lead. Form up on my wing for departure. We'll establish combat formation at Angels 20. As her aircraft lifted off the runway, Riley felt a completion that 4 years of maintenance work had been building toward. The F-22's power responded to her commands with precision that came from understanding every component in the aircraft's complex systems. She wasn't just flying the machine, she was thinking with it. The other 8 pilots fell into formation around her with professional competence, but Riley could sense their uncertainty through their flight patterns. They were following orders from someone whose qualifications they didn't understand, whose combat experience was unproven, whose authority came from circumstances none of them had witnessed before. Falcon Flight, climb to flight level 350 and maintain defensive spread, Riley ordered as they gained altitude. Unknown aircraft are approaching in 3 distinct formations. Our tactical advantage will come from superior systems, integration and coordinated engagement rather than individual dogfighting. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the COM system with barely concealed skepticism. Falcon Lead, request clarification of engagement rules and tactical command authority. Riley understood his concern. 48 hours ago, she had been the maintenance worker who had saved his life by detecting the fuel system defect. Now she was ordering him into combat against superior numbers using tactics he'd never trained for. Falcon 2. Tactical authority has been established through Special Operations Command under emergency authorization. Engagement rules are simple. Protect the base and neutralize threats using whatever methods prove most effective, Lieutenant. Colonel Phoenix's voice cut into the frequency. From her position as flight observer, in the back seat of Falcon 4, all pilots, be advised that Falcon Lead has been assessed and qualified under protocols that most of you haven't been exposed to. Follow her tactical guidance without question. As they reached combat altitude, Riley's radar systems began painting the approaching threat. What she saw made her blood run cold. The unknown aircraft weren't flying in standard military formations. Their flight pattern suggested technology and tactics that didn't match any known adversary in American intelligence databases. Falcon Flight. I'm seeing bogies at bearing 320, distance 150 nautical miles, closing at high speed. Configuration unknown, but flight characteristics suggest advanced technology beyond current threat assessments. Riley's maintenance background suddenly became crucial. Her understanding of radar signatures, engine performance, and aerodynamic capabilities allowed her to analyze the incoming aircraft in ways that pure pilot training wouldn't provide. Based on radar return patterns, these aircraft have stealth characteristics but aren't completely invisible. More importantly, their formation discipline suggests automated flight systems rather than individual piloting. We're not facing conventional fighters, we're facing drone swarms with advanced AI control. Tactical implications were staggering. Traditional air-to-air combat assumed human pilots making individual decisions under stress. Drone swarms could execute coordinated maneuvers with precision no human formation could match, react to threats without emotional considerations, and sacrifice individual units for tactical advantage without hesitation. Falcon Lead. How do we engage enemies that don't think like human pilots? Asked Lieutenant Torres from Falcon 6. Riley's mind processed the question through 4 years of technical analysis and tactical study. We use advantages they can't replicate. Human intuition, adaptive problem solving, and most importantly, technical knowledge that lets us exploit their system vulnerabilities. She switched her radar to mapping mode, analyzing the electromagnetic signatures of the approaching aircraft. Her technical background revealed patterns that pure pilot training might miss. Falcon Flight. I'm detecting synchronized communication bursts between the bogey formations. They're operating on a networked command structure. If we can disrupt their control links, we can turn their coordination advantage into a vulnerability. Captain Rodriguez from Falcon 7 came on the comm. Lead. How do we disrupt something we can't identify or target directly? Riley smiled inside her helmet. This was where her unique combination of technical knowledge and flight capability became invaluable. We use electronic warfare systems in ways they weren't designed for, but which their technical specifications can support. Each of our aircraft has more computing power and signal processing capability than most pilots ever utilize. Over the next 10 minutes, as the unknown aircraft closed to engagement range, Riley walked her flight through tactical modifications that combined standard combat procedures with technical innovations that most pilots would never consider. She reconfigured their radar systems to function as active jammers, modified their communication equipment to broadcast interference patterns, and coordinated their missile systems to create overlapping electromagnetic fields that would disrupt the networking capabilities of drone swarms. Falcon Flight. Engage electronic countermeasures on my mark. We're going to blind their coordination systems before we engage with weapons. The execution was flawless. 9 F-22s and F-35s simultaneously activated modified electronic warfare systems that created a wall of interference across multiple frequency ranges. The effect on the approaching drone formations was immediate and dramatic. Falcon lead, bogey formations are breaking apart. Individual aircraft are losing formation discipline. Riley watched her tactical display as 24 coordinated threats became 24 individual targets operating without central coordination. Her technical innovation had transformed an impossible engagement into a conventional air superiority mission. Falcon Flight. Engage targets of opportunity. Maintain mutual support and watch for regrouping attempts. Air battle that followed lasted 18 minutes and demonstrated why Riley's unconventional background made her exceptionally qualified for modern aerial warfare. While other pilots focused on individual targets, she coordinated electronic warfare, managed tactical communications, and identified system vulnerabilities that turned technological superiority into decisive advantage. When the last unknown aircraft was destroyed or had retreated beyond radar range, Falcon Flight had suffered no losses and had expended fewer missiles than conventional engagement doctrine would have required. Tower control. Falcon lead. Airspace is clear of hostile contacts. Requesting approach clearance for full flight. As they descended toward Falcon Ridge, Riley's radio crackled with communications from across the region. Other air bases had faced similar attacks but with less successful outcomes. Conventional tactical responses had resulted in heavy losses and limited effectiveness against the advanced drone technology. Captain Mitchell's voice came through the com with a tone Riley had never heard from him before. Falcon lead, that was extraordinary tactical leadership. Where did you learn to coordinate electronic warfare like that? Riley considered her response carefully. Falcon 2, 4 years of understanding how these aircraft actually work, combined with tactical study that most people dismissed as exceeding my qualifications. As they entered the traffic pattern, Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix's voice carried across the tactical frequency with unmistakable satisfaction. Falcon Flight. You've just demonstrated why the Air Force needs to fundamentally reconsider how it identifies and develops combat capability. Traditional qualification metrics almost prevented us from utilizing our most effective tactical asset. When Riley finally shut down Raptor 03 after landing, she climbed out of the cockpit to find ground crews, maintenance personnel, and pilots gathered around her aircraft. The same people who had watched her work in maintenance bays for 4 years were now seeing her return from a combat mission that had saved the base and potentially demonstrated new paradigms for aerial warfare. Colonel Drake approached her position, his expression showing a mixture of amazement and what looked like genuine shame. Navarro. Staff Sergeant Navarro, he corrected himself, noting the promotion Phoenix had mentioned during their earlier confrontation. That was exceptional tactical leadership under impossible conditions. Riley removed her helmet, her hair disheveled from the flight, her face showing the focus and intensity that combat operations demanded. "Sir, it was the mission. Nothing more, nothing less, but Chief Master Sergeant." Reeves stepped forward with an expression that suggested she understood the deeper implications of what had just occurred. "Riley, what you accomplished today wasn't just successful air defense. You demonstrated that technical expertise and tactical innovation can redefine what's possible in modern warfare." As debriefing procedures began and intelligence officers arrived to analyze the engagement, Riley realized that her prove-it moment had exceeded every expectation. She hadn't just demonstrated that she could fly combat aircraft, she had shown that her unique background made her more effective than traditionally trained pilots in scenarios that mattered most. The maintenance worker who had been dismissed as exceeding her qualifications had just redefined what those qualifications should be. The second wave alert came just as Riley finished her initial debrief with intelligence officers who were still struggling to understand how 9 American fighters had defeated 24 advanced drones using tactics that didn't exist in any manual. She was in the Squadron Operations Center, reviewing radar data from the engagement, when the emergency communication system activated with a priority level that made the morning's crisis seem routine. "All stations, this is NORAD command. Multiple large formations of unknown aircraft have appeared simultaneously across 7 western states. Initial estimate suggests over 300 individual contacts moving toward strategic military installations and population centers." Riley felt the blood drain from her face. The morning's engagement hadn't been an isolated attack, it had been a probe, testing American defensive responses before launching a coordinated assault that dwarfed anything in military planning scenarios. Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix burst into the operations center, her expression grim with implications that went far beyond base defense. "Riley, we've got a situation that makes this morning look like a training exercise. Intelligence suggests the first wave was designed to analyze our response capabilities. Now they're coming with overwhelming numbers." Colonel Drake, who had been quietly observing Riley's debrief with what appeared to be newfound respect, looked up from communication logs with obvious alarm. "Colonel Phoenix, if we're facing 300 aircraft, this base's defensive capabilities are completely inadequate. We need to evacuate critical personnel and request immediate strategic response." "Sir," Riley interrupted, studying the tactical displays showing incoming threats across the western United States, "evacuation won't solve the larger problem. If these formations reach their targets, we're looking at catastrophic damage to American air defense infrastructure." Phoenix nodded grimly. "Riley's right. This isn't just about defending Falcon Ridge anymore. This is about preventing a coordinated attack that could cripple our ability to respond to future threats." Riley analyzed the incoming data with the same systematic approach she had applied to maintenance diagnostics for 4 years. But now, instead of troubleshooting individual aircraft, she was processing tactical information that could determine the outcome of what appeared to be a coordinated assault on American airspace, based on the formation patterns and approach vectors. "These aren't independent attacks," she reported. "They're coordinated strikes designed to overwhelm regional air defenses through simultaneous engagement at multiple locations." Major Hartwell, who had remained silent during the morning's revelations, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Staff Sergeant, what are you suggesting as a response strategy?" Riley looked around the room at faces that 12 hours earlier had dismissed her as an insubordinate maintenance worker. Now they were seeking tactical guidance from someone whose qualifications they were still struggling to understand. "Ma'am, conventional air defense assumes enemy formations that operate within known parameters. But this morning's engagement showed that these aircraft use networked coordination systems. If we can disrupt their command architecture on a regional scale, we might be able to neutralize superior numbers through system failure rather than individual combat." "Phoenix, Studied tactical maps showing the scope of incoming threats. Riley, what you're describing would require coordinated electronic warfare across multiple air bases, using equipment and techniques that most installations don't possess. Actually, ma'am, it would require using existing equipment in ways that exceed normal operational parameters, but which are technically feasible based on system specifications most people never explore. Riley moved to the primary tactical display, her hands working across interfaces with the confidence that came from understanding complex systems at both technical and operational levels. Every air defense installation in the region has electronic warfare capabilities, but they're typically used for local jamming and countermeasures. If we network those systems and coordinate their output, we can create interference patterns across multiple frequency ranges that would disrupt the command links for hundreds of aircraft simultaneously. Colonel Drake leaned forward, his skepticism warring with recognition that conventional approaches were inadequate. Staff Sergeant, what you're describing isn't in any tactical manual. How do you know it's possible? Riley met his gaze directly. Sir, I've spent 4 years studying these systems from the technical side. I know what they're designed to do, what they're capable of beyond design parameters, and how they can be modified for applications that weren't originally intended. Phoenix activated her secure communication system, connecting to regional command networks. Riley, if your approach has any chance of working, we need to implement it immediately. Intelligence shows the main formations will reach target areas within 90 minutes. Over the next hour, Riley found herself coordinating with air defense installations across 7 states, walking technical personnel through modifications to electronic warfare systems that would have been considered impossible under normal circumstances. Her unique combination of maintenance expertise and tactical understanding allowed her to bridge the gap between theoretical capability and practical implementation. The technical challenges were enormous. Each installation had different equipment configurations, varying personnel capabilities, and distinct operational constraints. Riley had to develop customized approaches for each location while maintaining overall coordination that would create the interference patterns necessary to disrupt enemy communications. Falcon Ridge Control. This is Yellowstone Base, came a voice through the communication system. We're having difficulty implementing the frequency coordination protocols. Our equipment isn't responding to the modifications as expected. Riley switched to direct communication with Yellowstone's technical team. Yellowstone. This is Falcon Ridge. Your installation has older electronic warfare systems that require manual calibration rather than automated adjustment. I'm sending specific parameter settings that should resolve the synchronization issues. Similar problems emerged at installations across the region. Equipment limitations, personnel training gaps, and technical complications that would have been insurmountable under normal circumstances. But Riley's comprehensive understanding of electronic warfare systems allowed her to develop solutions in real time, adapting her approach to the specific capabilities and constraints of each location. Captain Mitchell, who had initially questioned Riley's authority that morning, found himself serving as her primary communication coordinator. Staff Sergeant, I'm seeing confirmation from all 7 installations. Electronic warfare systems are synchronized and ready for coordinated activation. Riley studied the tactical display, showing incoming enemy formations now less than 30 minutes from their targets. All stations prepare for coordinated electronic warfare activation on my mark. Remember, we get one chance at this. If the interference patterns don't disrupt their command networks immediately, they'll adapt their systems and we won't get another opportunity. Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix, monitoring communications from multiple command levels, looked up from her secure terminal. Riley, I'm getting reports that this coordinated approach has never been attempted before. There's no precedent for success or failure. Ma'am, there's also no precedent for facing 300 coordinated drone aircraft in American airspace. We're past the point where conventional Approaches are adequate. Riley initiated the countdown sequence. That would either demonstrate the effectiveness of her technical innovation or expose the limitations of untested theory under combat conditions. All stations. Electronic warfare activation in 10 seconds. 5.4. Mark. Across 7 states, air defense installations simultaneously activated modified electronic warfare systems, creating overlapping interference patterns designed to disrupt the command networks controlling hundreds of enemy aircraft. The effect was immediate and devastating. Radar screens across the region showed enemy formations breaking apart as individual aircraft lost coordination and began operating independently. Formation discipline collapsed. Navigation systems failed. Command links severed. Falcon Ridge, this is NORAD command. Unknown aircraft formations are showing massive system failures. Coordinated movement has ceased and individual aircraft are either retreating or crashing due to navigation loss. Riley watched the tactical displays with satisfaction and relief. Her technical gamble had worked. 300 enemy aircraft had been neutralized not through overwhelming firepower, but through systematic disruption of the technology that made their coordination possible. But the celebration was premature. Her radar systems detected a new formation approaching from a different vector aircraft that appeared immune to the electronic interference that had neutralized the larger force. All stations. I'm tracking 12 aircraft approaching from the northwest. These contacts are not affected by our countermeasures. They appear to be manned fighters rather than drone systems. Phoenix's voice carried new tension. Riley, these might be the command aircraft that were controlling the drone formations. If so, they represent the most advanced threat we've faced. Riley analyzed the radar signatures of the approaching aircraft, her technical background revealing characteristics that made her stomach tighten with apprehension. Based on their radar returns and flight characteristics, these aren't standard aircraft. They're showing stealth capabilities beyond anything in current intelligence assessments. More importantly, their approach vector suggests they're targeting this installation. Specifically, Colonel Drake activated base defense systems with obvious alarm. If they're targeting Falcon Ridge directly, it's because our electronic warfare coordination made us the priority threat. Riley realized that her tactical success had painted a target on their location. The enemy command element was coming to eliminate the source of interference that have neutralized their strategic attack. Sir, we have 9 aircraft ready for immediate launch, but these incoming contacts appear to have technological advantages that make conventional engagement extremely risky. Phoenix began coordination for immediate aircraft launch. Riley, you've already demonstrated that unconventional thinking can overcome technological superiority. What's your assessment for engaging targets that our standard tactics can't address? Riley studied the approaching threats, her mind processing technical and tactical factors that would determine whether Falcon Ridge could survive what appeared to be a targeted retaliation strike. Ma'am, if these are command aircraft with advanced stealth and unknown weapon systems, we need to engage them using advantages they won't expect. Our technical understanding of their weaknesses, combined with tactical innovation that exceeds their planning parameters. As she suited up for what would be the most challenging air combat mission in American military history, Riley understood that her morning's success had been preparation for a test that would determine not just her own capabilities, but the effectiveness of an entirely new approach to aerial warfare. In 20 minutes, she would face the ultimate validation of everything she had learned, trained for, and prepared to prove. The 12 elite enemy fighters approaching Falcon Ridge represented technology that shouldn't have existed according to American intelligence assessments. As Riley launched with her 8 aircraft formation to intercept them, her radar systems painted a picture of adversaries operating with stealth characteristics, electronic warfare capabilities, and flight performance that exceeded known parameters for any nation's air force. The engagement that followed lasted 37 minutes and redefined modern aerial combat doctrine. Riley's tactical innovation, using her comprehensive understanding of aircraft systems to exploit vulnerabilities that traditional pilot training wouldn't recognize, turned technological disadvantage into strategic victory. Her formation destroyed all 12 enemy command aircraft while suffering only minor damage to 2 F-35s. But the implications of what had occurred went far beyond tactical success. Within hours of the engagement's conclusion, Falcon Ridge Air Base became the focus of attention from the highest levels of American military and intelligence leadership. The base that had been considered a routine training installation was suddenly hosting generals, admirals, Pentagon officials, and intelligence analysts trying to understand how a maintenance worker had developed tactics that neutralized what appeared to be the most advanced air threat America had ever faced. Riley found herself in the unprecedented position of briefing 4-star generals on combat innovations that had emerged from technical knowledge they hadn't realized existed within their own force structure. Staff Sergeant Navarro, General Patricia Morrison, Air Combat Command's commanding general, said as she reviewed after-action reports that seemed impossible according to conventional military doctrine, "Your tactical innovations today prevented what intelligence now confirms would have been catastrophic damage to American air defense infrastructure. The coordinated attack you disrupted was designed to cripple our ability to defend against follow-on strikes." The briefing room at Falcon Ridge had been hastily converted into a secure conference facility. Present were senior officers from every major command, intelligence officials whose clearances Riley didn't have access to know about, and technical specialists trying to understand how existing equipment had been modified to achieve capabilities that exceeded design specifications. "Ma'am," Riley replied, "the technical approaches I used were based on understanding system capabilities that most people don't explore because they exceed normal operational parameters. But the specifications were always there, we just weren't using them." Admiral James Fletcher, representing Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward with obvious interest. "Sergeant, what you accomplished today suggests that our current methods for identifying and developing tactical capabilities may be fundamentally flawed. How long have you possessed these technical and flight qualifications?" Riley considered her response carefully. "Sir, I've been developing these capabilities for 4 years, parallel to my maintenance duties. I believe that combining technical expertise with flight skills would make me more valuable to our mission. But the military's qualification systems didn't recognize or utilize that combination, General." Morrison consulted briefing documents that appeared to contain information about Riley's background that went beyond her official personnel file. "Sergeant, our investigation shows that you were systematically excluded from advancement opportunities despite possessing qualifications that exceeded those of personnel who were promoted ahead of you. Is that accurate?" "Yes, ma'am. My applications for pilot training and advanced technical positions were consistently delayed or rejected for reasons that seemed designed to maintain existing hierarchies rather than evaluate actual capabilities." The room fell silent as senior military leadership processed the implications of what they were hearing. The most effective tactical response to the day's crisis had come from someone their own system had tried to suppress. Colonel Drake, who had been conspicuously quiet during the briefing, was asked to provide his assessment of Riley's performance during her time at Falcon Ridge. "Generals," Drake began, his voice carrying a tone Riley had never heard from him before, "I need to acknowledge that my evaluation of Staff Sergeant Navarro's capabilities was profoundly wrong. I saw her comprehensive approach to maintenance and her interest in operational matters as overreaching rather than exceptional. Qualification." He paused, clearly struggling with admissions that challenged his understanding of leadership and personnel development. "More troubling, I actively worked to restrict her opportunities and initiated investigations designed to limit her advancement. I was so focused on maintaining traditional role boundaries that I failed to recognize exceptional talent that could have been utilized years ago. Admiral Fletcher turned his attention to the intelligence officials present. What's our assessment of how many similar situations might exist across our force structure? How many qualified personnel are we failing to identify or develop because they don't fit conventional advancement pathways? Colonel Sarah Phoenix, who had been observing the briefing from the back of the room, stepped forward with information that made the scope of the problem clear. Admiral, Special Operations Recruitment Division has identified over 2,000 personnel across all services who possess technical or tactical qualifications that exceed their current assignments but who have been excluded from advancement due to institutional bias, bureaucratic obstacles, or leadership failures similar to what occurred here. The numbers represented a systematic waste of human potential that had national security implications. General Morrison directed her attention back to Riley. Staff Sergeant, your success today raises questions that go beyond individual recognition. We need to understand how to identify and develop personnel with your combination of technical expertise and tactical innovation. Riley had been preparing for this question throughout the briefing. Ma'am, the military's current qualification systems prioritize credentials over capabilities and maintain artificial separations between technical and operational roles. People with diverse skill sets are forced to choose narrow specializations that don't utilize their full potential. What would you recommend as systemic changes? Integration rather than separation. Technical personnel should have opportunities to develop operational skills. Operational personnel should have access to comprehensive technical training. Most importantly, advancement should be based on demonstrated capability rather than traditional qualification pathways. Over the next several hours, Riley found herself at the center of discussions that would fundamentally change how the American military identified, developed, and utilized personnel. Her success had exposed flaws in institutional thinking that went far beyond individual cases of mismanagement, but recognition of her achievements was only part of what emerged from the day's events. An investigation into Colonel Drake's leadership revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices that extended beyond Riley's case. Major Hartwell's participation in suppressing qualified personnel was documented through communications and witness statements. The Office of Special Investigations review that had been used to restrict Riley's activities was found to have been initiated without proper justification and conducted in violation of established procedures. Colonel Drake, General Morrison announced during the final session of the investigation, your actions toward Staff Sergeant Navarro and potentially other personnel under your command represent leadership failures that compromised operational effectiveness and wasted valuable military resources. You will be relieved of command immediately and reassigned to duties that do not involve personnel management. The consequences extended beyond individual accountability. Falcon Ridge Air Base was designated as the location for a new integrated training program that would combine technical expertise with operational skills. The electronic warfare innovations Riley had developed were classified and incorporated into advanced tactical doctrine. Her approach to air combat was studied and implemented across multiple commands. Most significantly, Riley herself was promoted to technical sergeant and offered her choice of assignments within the Special Operations community. Technical Sergeant Navarro, Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix said as the official proceedings concluded, "You've demonstrated that exceptional capability can emerge from unexpected sources when institutional barriers are removed. Where would you like to apply these talents next?" Riley considered the options that were now available to her. Test pilot assignments, special operations teams, advanced tactical development programs, leadership positions that would allow her to identify and develop other overlooked personnel. "Ma'am, I'd like to work on preventing situations like mine from occurring in the future. The military has exceptional people who are being wasted because the system doesn't recognize their potential. I want to help change that." Chief Master Sergeant Reeves, who had quietly supported Riley throughout her time at Falcon Ridge, approached as the briefing concluded. "Riley, I knew you had special capabilities, but I had no idea of the scope of what you'd accomplished through your own initiative. You've not only proven your individual worth, you've exposed institutional problems that needed to be addressed." As evening approached and the stream of officials began departing Falcon Ridge, Riley found herself back in Hangar 7, looking at the aircraft she had been maintaining just 24 hours earlier. The same machines, the same technical systems, but her relationship to them had been fundamentally transformed. She was no longer the invisible maintenance worker who understood these aircraft better than anyone realized. She was a recognized expert whose innovations had prevented national catastrophe, and whose experience would shape how the military developed talent for years to come. Captain Mitchell, who had questioned her authority that morning, approached with an expression that mixed respect with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Technical Sergeant, I owe you an apology that goes beyond today's mission. I and others dismissed your qualifications based on assumptions that had nothing to do with your actual capabilities." Riley looked around the hangar at personnel who were processing the day's revelations. Some showed satisfaction that hidden talent had finally been recognized. Others appeared uncomfortable with how thoroughly their assumptions had been proven wrong. "Captain, the important thing isn't the apologies. It's making sure this kind of institutional blindness doesn't prevent other qualified people from contributing their best efforts to our mission." Senior Master Sergeant Thompson, who had tried to protect Riley from Colonel Drake's retaliation, joined the conversation. "Riley, what you accomplished today was remarkable, but what might be more important is how you did it. You didn't succeed despite being underestimated. You succeeded because being underestimated forced you to become exceptionally prepared." That observation captured something essential about Riley's journey. 4 years of invisibility hadn't been wasted time, they had been intensive preparation for challenges that conventional training couldn't address. As she prepared to leave Falcon Ridge for advanced assignments that would utilize her unique combination of skills, Riley understood that her personal vindication represented something larger than individual success. She had demonstrated that the military's greatest strategic advantage wasn't advanced technology or overwhelming firepower, it was the complete development and utilization of human potential, regardless of where that potential was found or how it was packaged. 2 years after the events that transformed her from dismissed maintenance worker to recognized tactical innovator, Technical Sergeant Riley Navarro stood before a classroom of 75 military personnel at the newly established Integrated Operations Institute at Falcon Ridge Air Base. The students represented a cross-section of specialties that traditional military training had kept rigidly separated: pilots, maintenance technicians, intelligence analysts, electronic warfare specialists, and logistics coordinators. The greatest tactical advantage in modern warfare, Riley began her advanced integration course, isn't superior technology or overwhelming firepower. It's the ability to think beyond the artificial boundaries that separate different military specialties and find solutions that conventional approaches miss. The Institute had been created as a direct result of Riley's success in developing and implementing tactics that combine technical expertise with operational innovation. Her approach, understanding systems comprehensively rather than focusing narrowly on single specialties, had become the foundation for an entirely new model of military professional development. In the 2 years since its establishment, the program had identified and developed over 300 personnel whose capabilities had been underutilized by traditional assignment systems. More importantly, it had demonstrated measurable improvements in operational effectiveness across every unit that implemented integrated training approaches. The morning when unknown aircraft appeared in our airspace, Riley continued, conventional thinking suggested we were facing impossible odds. 24 enemy aircraft against 9 defenders, followed by coordinated attacks involving hundreds of targets across multiple states. She activated the tactical display showing the engagement patterns from that decisive day. Now studied as a case study in military academies worldwide, victory came not from superior equipment or overwhelming force, but from understanding system relationships that single specialty training doesn't address. Maintenance knowledge revealed technical vulnerabilities. Electronic warfare expertise identified coordination weaknesses. Flight experience provided tactical flexibility. Captain Rodriguez, who had flown as Falcon 7 during the original engagement and was now an instructor at the Institute, added his perspective from the pilot's viewpoint. What Technical Sergeant Navarro accomplished that day required capabilities that no standard training program develops, he told the class. She understood our aircraft better than most pilots, enemy systems better than most intelligence analysts, and electronic warfare better than most specialists. That combination made the impossible become routine. Transformation at Falcon Ridge extended far beyond individual success stories. The base had become a laboratory for developing military talent in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about career development and specialization. Master Sergeant Jennifer Walsh, who had been a communications technician before discovering exceptional aptitude for tactical analysis, represented the kind of career path that the Institute made possible. 3 years ago, I was considered a specialist in narrow technical skills, Walsh told Riley's class. The traditional system would have kept me in communications for my entire career. The integrated approach revealed capabilities I didn't know I possessed and provided opportunities that wouldn't have existed under conventional advancement. Pathways, similar stories emerged from personnel across different specialties. Aircraft maintainers who became test pilots. Intelligence analysts who developed electronic warfare expertise. Logistics coordinators who discovered tactical innovation capabilities. But the Institute's impact extended beyond individual career development. The tactical innovations that emerged from integrated thinking had been implemented across multiple commands, fundamentally changing how American military forces approached complex operational challenges. Riley's electronic warfare coordination techniques were now standard doctrine for air defense operations. Her approach to technical problem-solving under combat conditions had been incorporated into pilot training programs. Most significantly, her methodology for identifying and exploiting system vulnerabilities had become essential preparation for facing adversaries with advanced technology. The threats we face today require solutions that transcend traditional specialty boundaries, General Morrison, now a strong advocate for integrated training, explained during her quarterly visit to the Institute. Technical Sergeant Navarro's success demonstrated that our most dangerous vulnerability wasn't technological inferiority, it was institutional rigidity that prevented us from utilizing our full capabilities. The changes implemented as a result of Riley's vindication had exposed similar situations throughout the military. Personnel review boards had identified hundreds of cases where qualified individuals had been systematically excluded from advancement due to institutional bias, bureaucratic obstacles, or leadership failures similar to what had occurred under Colonel Drake's command. Colonel Drake himself had been quietly retired from military service after the investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices that extended across his entire career. Major Hartwell had been reassigned to administrative duties that didn't involve personnel management. The Office of Special Investigations had implemented new protocols designed to prevent security investigations from being used as tools of personal retaliation. But Perhaps the most significant change was cultural rather than procedural. Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix, now commanding officer of the Integrated Operations Institute, addressed this transformation during a conference on military professional development. The most important lesson from Technical Sergeant Navarro's experience isn't about individual recognition. Phoenix explained to an audience of senior military leaders from across all services. It's about institutional humility, acknowledging that exceptional capability can emerge from unexpected sources and in unexpected combinations. She gestured toward statistical displays showing operational improvements across units that had implemented integrated training approaches. When we stop assuming that talent looks a certain way, comes from specific backgrounds, or follows predictable pathways, we discover capabilities that were always present but never utilized. Riley's personal journey had evolved beyond her original goal of becoming a combat pilot. She had been offered prestigious assignments in test pilot programs, special operations units, and advanced tactical development positions. Instead, she had chosen to remain at Falcon Ridge, working to prevent other qualified personnel from experiencing the systematic dismissal she had endured. Her role had expanded beyond instruction to include personnel evaluation, program development, and institutional consulting. Military installations worldwide requested her expertise in identifying underutilized talent and developing integrated training approaches. Technical Sergeant Navarro, Chief Master Sergeant Reeves, now serving as the Institute's senior enlisted advisor, observed during one of their regular planning sessions, "You've accomplished something rare in military history. You've turned personal vindication into systemic improvement." Riley considered this assessment while reviewing applications from personnel seeking admission to advanced integration programs. "Chief, the personal vindication was never the real goal. The goal was proving that the military could be more effective if it recognized and developed talent, regardless of how that talent was packaged." She gestured toward the application files representing hundreds of military personnel whose capabilities exceeded their current assignments. Every one of these applications represents someone who could contribute more to our mission if institutional barriers weren't preventing them from reaching their potential. The broader implications of Riley's success continued to influence military policy at the highest levels. The Secretary of Defense had established a cross-service commission on talent utilization, with Riley serving as a technical advisor on identifying and developing non-traditional capabilities. Her recommendations were being implemented across all branches of the military. Performance-based advancement rather than credential-based promotion, cross-training opportunities that develop diverse skill sets, and leadership evaluation that emphasize talent development rather than traditional hierarchy maintenance. But perhaps the most meaningful validation of Riley's journey came from unexpected sources. During a base visit, she encountered Airman First Class Maria Santos, a young maintenance technician whose background paralleled Riley's own experience 4 years earlier. Santos possessed exceptional technical knowledge, demonstrated innovative problem-solving abilities, and showed interest in operational matters that her supervisors considered overreaching. Technical Sergeant Santos approached Riley after a maintenance briefing where her comprehensive analysis had been dismissed by senior personnel. "I've been following your career development. Is it really possible for someone like me to advance beyond traditional maintenance roles?" Riley studied Santos, seeing her own younger self in someone whose capabilities were being overlooked by institutional thinking that hadn't fully evolved. Despite policy changes, Airman Santos, 4 years ago, I was asking the same question. The answer isn't just about possibility, it's about preparation, persistence, and understanding that institutional change happens. Gradually, she handed Santos information about advanced training opportunities that hadn't existed during Riley's early career. "The barriers that limited my advancement still exist in some forms, but they're no longer absolute. More importantly, there are now pathways for developing and demonstrating diverse capabilities that can lead to opportunities beyond traditional specialty boundaries. Over the following months, Riley mentored Santos through the same kind of comprehensive preparation that had sustained her through 4 years of invisibility. Technical training that exceeded standard requirements, tactical education that provided broader understanding of military operations, and most importantly, the institutional navigation skills necessary to advance despite occasional resistance from traditional thinking. As Santos successfully transitioned from maintenance to pilot training through the Institute's integrated pathway, Riley realized that her legacy wasn't just personal vindication or even tactical innovation. Her legacy was the systematic transformation of how the American military identified, developed, and utilized human potential. Standing in Hangar 7, now converted into a state-of-the-art integrated training facility, Riley reflected on the journey that had brought her from dismissed maintenance worker to institutional change agent. The aircraft were the same, F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightning II fighters that represented the pinnacle of American aviation technology. But the people working with those aircraft had fundamentally different opportunities than Riley had possessed 4 years earlier. Maintenance technicians were developing flight capabilities. Pilots were learning comprehensive technical systems. Intelligence analysts were training in electronic warfare. The artificial boundaries that had once limited career development were gradually dissolving in favor of approaches that maximized individual potential and operational effectiveness. Technical Sergeant Navarro, Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix approached as Riley completed her evening inspection of training aircraft. "I wanted you to see the latest statistical analysis of program effectiveness." She handed Riley a tablet displaying data that confirmed what they had observed anecdotally. Units that implemented integrated training approaches showed measurable improvements in mission success rates, equipment reliability, and personnel satisfaction. More importantly, Phoenix continued, "We're seeing similar programs being established at installations worldwide. Your approach to combining technical expertise with operational capability is becoming the standard rather than the exception." Riley reviewed the data with satisfaction that went beyond personal achievement. The systematic changes that had emerged from her individual struggle were creating opportunities for thousands of military personnel whose potential might otherwise have been wasted. "Ma'am, the most rewarding aspect isn't the recognition or the career advancement. It's knowing that other qualified people won't have to spend years being invisible before their capabilities are recognized." As the sun set over the Montana mountains surrounding Falcon Ridge Air Base, Riley understood that her transformation from underestimated maintenance worker to recognized innovator represented something larger than individual success. Had demonstrated that America's greatest strategic advantage wasn't technological superiority or overwhelming resources. It was the complete development and utilization of human potential, regardless of where that potential was found or how it challenged conventional expectations. The maintenance worker who had been called too weak for combat had not only proven her critics wrong, she had fundamentally changed the system that had created those critics in the first place. And in military installations around the world, other invisible personnel were discovering that exceptional preparation, combined with institutional courage, could transform both individual careers and the organizations they served. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.